Hello there, welcome back to my channel and welcome to one of the most highly requested videos. This is all about brows. I'm going to cover a lot of ground, so without further ado, let's just jump right into it. All right, as you're looking at me, you can tell I'm not quite finished with my look. Yes, I need to do my hair, but I also need to finish my brows. Now, my brows don't look terrible, and that is because of two things. If you are somebody like me who, as you've gotten older, your brows have gotten thinner and whiter or lighter, you definitely, first of all, need to look into using a brow serum. Now, the one that I started with about 4 or 5 years ago and saw results within about 4 to 6 weeks is the Rapid Brow. This is one of the least expensive ones on the market, so that was why I started off with this one. It does have a nice spoolie on the end of it. I applied it at the beginning in the morning and in the evening, but then as my brows filled in, I just was using this at night. The other one that I discovered, I think towards the end of last year, and I've been so impressed, and it's actually even half the price of this one, is by The Ordinary. Now this is a lash and brow serum, so you could also use this on your lashes. I would just encourage you, if you're going to do that, do a separate tube for your lashes and a separate one for your brows. But same thing, I apply this at night. This one has a tiny little brush tip, and I really just smudge and smear this into my brow line in all the areas that are sparse, and I feel like this probably has actually even given me a little more hair growth than the brow serum. Now, once you start getting those brow hairs in though, it does not mean that they're gonna come in dark, because mine don't. I do have a number of gray hairs and light hairs through my brows. So the next thing that I would highly encourage you to do is to dye your eyebrows. Now, when I first did this, I actually went to a salon. I had a friend do it. She was an esthetician, but then I found out that you can actually do this safely and easily at home. One of the products that I have used for years and I feel like this one lasts the best because it does not fade on the hair. You will have to redo it every couple of weeks just because of your new growth of the hair, but it's not going to fade on the hair. So some of the brow dyes are vegetable based and they do fade very quickly. This one does not. Now I'm gonna walk you through dyeing my brows yesterday. That's how I have so much color in them right now. So I'm showing you here the full kit. You're gonna want to you need to get the activator, the colorant, and then usually on Amazon, they have a nice kit that comes with the brush and the little stir stick and this nice little glass dish. You also want to make sure you have a couple of cotton rounds and a couple Q-tips. And I prefer the liquid version of the activant, but you can do a cream version as well. I'll list and link everything down below for you. But the way that I do this is I just mix about 8 drops or so. There's not really an exact amount of colorant and the activator, but you just want to make sure that the combination of the two is going to give you about the consistency of toothpaste. Now, the biggest thing is you want to use this little spatula that looks pretty useless, but you want to use this to swirl around and swirl and just keep mixing and mixing and mixing until you get that consistency. Add more drops or color if you need to. You really do not need very much color for each application, and you'll see this amount actually is enough for me to do a couple of coats on my brows. Now, the next thing you want to do is take that brush and you're going to brush this into your brow line. Now, you want to focus most of the product on the hairs themselves. Now, I have Wile E. Coyote brows here and there, and they do not want to lay flat and keep the color on there. So I brush down, I brush all different directions, trying to coat all of those hairs as well as I can. And you'll see I'm getting slightly out of the line of my brows, but I'm trying to stay very close to the brow line because this dye, if you have to leave it on for too long, it will tint your skin, but it will gradually wear off. So don't be too panicked. So I'm just applying this through my brow hairs, and I personally have my left brow takes longer to process than my right brow. So as I started this process, I glanced up at the clock and I started with my left brow. And so working this through, and again, just trying to create the most even coat on there. And then you can take your Q-tip and just make sure you clean up any of the excess dye that's that's below the line or above the line. And you really want to try to avoid any big globs because those will show up for a day or two on your skin if you leave those kind of fully in a glob. So you want to smooth it out as best as possible. Once you have it on, you're seeing that that color is changing dramatically. We started off with kind of a reddish brown and now it's getting super dark. Don't panic, but if this is your first time dyeing your brows, you can remove it. I would encourage you actually to remove it after about 3 minutes or so. Remove it with just a damp cotton pad and gently wipe it off. And you'll see that I have pretty good color. I left it on my left brow for about 10 minutes total from the time I started applying it, and then another 5 minutes after I was done. I decided I wanted to add a little more color. I had a few brow hairs that I could tell at the roots had not grabbed the color. If you have white or gray hair, it's going to require that dye to stay on there a little bit longer. But just play with this. Again, you can always go in with a second, with a third coat to get the depth of color that you want. But if you go in and you leave it on too long, it's a little hard to remove the color, so just be careful. After removing it, you can see I did have a little bit of some staining left on my skin, but now today, looking at my brows, obviously I do have my foundation on, but you can see all of that excess color that I had kind of a little bit outside of my brow hairs. It's pretty much faded. If you get too much color on your skin, you can use coconut oil and just gently rub on that, and that will help it fade faster. But once you have your hairs dyed, I think it makes it so much easier to fill in. I always enjoy freshly dyed brows on myself. Now, all right, let's talk about finding your perfect brow shape. Now, there's a couple of ways to do this. I'm going to actually walk you through a way to do it freehand without any patterns or stencils. Speaking of stencils though, I've had a number of questions about the brow stamping kits that are out there. And let me just give you my brief review of those and I'll talk about the pros and the cons. So the pros are, they all come with a bunch of stencils. These stencils are clear, they're in a load of different shapes, sizes. There's usually large, medium, and small, and they are angular, they're curved. It can really help you kind of decide what type of brow shape is closest to yours, especially if you are working with very little hair and you're just not sure. These can be a helpful tool. However, what I have found is two things. Number one, you are working with an individual stencil. So it depends on how you hold this stencil. And I mean, there's lines here, but it's really hard to see. And there's no definition around the edge of the stencil itself. So I have actually found this really hard to figure out if I've gotten it lined up correctly. And then you're supposed to take the stamping tool and you stamp the brow product. Okay, this seems really easy, but you gotta make sure you've got this thing like suctioned to your face so you don't get outside the line. Okay, you get one brow done. I've done one successfully, but then you flip the brow stencil over and you're having to hold it with your opposite hand. Keep your fingers all out of the way, keep it adhered to your face, and somehow get it all lined up perfectly with the other side. So I personally have not found these to be helpful or easy to use. Some people love them, but I have tried and tried and tried, and I have not been able to make those work. Also, you're supposed to do that before you apply your foundation. And most of the time I forget, or I've already applied my foundation. I do that, then I have to go back and touch up foundation. It's just not quicker for me. Now, one thing that I found to be a little easier to use are these stencils from Amazon. I showed these in a video. I'll link that down below. I'm not gonna try the whole thing on for you and do it today. But these are a fun tool, and what makes these easier is, first of all, they're not completely clear, so you can better see exactly where the edge of that stencil is laying. Also, It's both brows all together. It comes with this elastic band. You put it over your brow, you put it on, and then you can go in with the brow pomade and stamp it on there, or you can just go in with your pencil. It's a very helpful tool, again, if you are starting from scratch and you just have no idea what is a good brow shape for you. But personally, I feel like going back to the basics of makeup application and brow application is still the easiest way to find your brow shape. What do I mean by that? Okay, there's 3 points that you need to determine to figure out where your brows should start, end, and where the top of the arch should be. I'll show you 2 different ways you can do this. So if you're using your brow pencil, you can do it kind of all at once. And what I mean by that is you can find your mark and then you can actually mark it at the same time. So the key is, let's find where our brows should start on the inner part. And you want to just lay your brush on the side of your nose, and you're going to just put a nice light little mark there. See that? Okay. And then where they should end, if you go from the bottom of your nose, you want to find the corner of your eye and go up from there. And that is where you want your brows typically to end. And then where the arch should be, again, tip of the nose, and you want to go through the center point of your eye. So if you're looking straight ahead through the iris of your eye, and you want to put the pencil there, and you can put a little dot right there. So up close, you can see I have a dot here, and I've got my line here. On the other side, I'll show you using the handle of my pencil. So again, starting here, and I'm going to start about there. Again, I'm going to find the edge, and it's really kind of the bottom of your nose, the corner of the eye, and put a dot there, and then through the iris of the eye and about right there. So you can see, I just find it a little easier just to use your pencil, but you can figure out which method works better for you. Now, I've talked and I have a whole video on uneven eyes. I have uneven brows and uneven eyes, and so I'll link that video down below. I don't want to go into it too much here, but you're going to see that my dot here is a little lower than my dot here. So I'm actually going to raise this dot a little bit higher just so that it is a little more even. So that's kind of what you want to check for when you're done. You could use your brow pencil or the handle of your pencil and just make sure those are pretty even. And then make sure that your dot on the outside of your brow does not go down, because you definitely do not want to curve your brows down too far. However, I am not of the belief that you should go too far outside of your natural brow line to make them go up. I've seen people bring in concealer or pluck the hairs here. I've worked too hard to get those hairs there. I want to keep them. But there is a balance between curving down and just curving out slightly. All right, now that we've got our shape mapped out, the next thing to consider is formula of your brow products. Now, I have so many different brow products, and I feel like every couple years I change my favorites. Years ago, I was a big time brow powder user. A brow powder is going to give you a much softer, diffuse look. If you just need a little fullness added to your brows, you don't really want much definition, a brow powder can be the best thing for you. This is the Anastasia Beverly Hills one. It will last you forever. I love that you get 2 shades so that you can do a lighter shade towards the inner corner and a little darker as you get out. I feel like this one adheres very well to the skin, and you can pair a powder with a brow gel to set everything in place. The next type of product would be a brow pomade. Again, I was on a brow pomade kick for a couple of years, and I've used a number of different brow pomades. Now, the thing with a brow pomade is I find it hard not to get a full-on brow look. So this can become really thick and heavy fast. So you have to go in with a light hand. If you're a beginner at doing your brows, I don't feel like a pomade is necessarily the easiest thing to do. It does though set and stay. A brow pomade is the type of formulation you're gonna find in those brow kits, the stamping kits. So that is what they typically use. But again, I find them to be a little bit too heavy and a little too harsh for the brow that I am going for now. My preferred brow formulas are either a pencil or a felt tip liner. You have seen me use this. I love this one from NYX. I think it is excellent. This is the NYX Lift and Snatch Brow Pen. I think this is one of the best, and it's around $10 or so. And this is really nice if you want very defined brow hairs. And I don't feel like this is necessarily the best thing if you're starting off with no brows. I think pencil is much more forgiving, but if you just have a couple of areas that you want to add a few brow hairs, this pen will do great things for you. I'll show you a little bit of that in a moment. But like I said, my favorite is a pencil. And pencils come in super skinny form. They also come in kind of more flat, rounded forms. They also come in larger, rounded pencils. It just depends on how much fill-in you have to do and how quick or how fast you need to get your brows done. Once you figure out what formulation is best for you, the next thing to determine is color. Now, this is something that I struggle with because I have highlighted hair. My natural color is this dark color, but then you go through with blonde highlights. So what color am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to do blonde? Am I supposed to do brown? Am I supposed to do soft brown, dark brown? What is it? Typically, I recommend going one shade lighter than what your hair tone is, unless you're blonde. If you're blonde, you're gonna wanna go at least one shade darker. I try to go kind of in between my natural color and my blonde. And unless you are an auburn or redhead, or you have maybe chestnut brown hair, you're gonna want to choose a brow color or brow tone that is very cool toned. So from NYX, I found a couple of shades that I can actually work between. So this is the shade Taupe. I think Taupe is a great shade if you have gray tones in your hair. Ash brown is another one. If you're a darker gray hair gal, this can be a really good tone for you as well. So this is ash brown, this is Taupe. You can see there's only a slight difference in color and in depth of color. So that's why I feel like you can get away with maybe a couple of different tones. This one from Milani is Taupe, and this one has more gray in it than the other two, about the same depth of color. And then Caramel is the one that I've been using more recently with my additional blonde in my hair. And if you can just see the slight difference, it has a hint more blonde warmth in it. Now, what I love about the IT Cosmetics brow pencil and then this Your Best Friend brow pencil is they come in a universal shade. So if you're really struggling to pick a shade and you want the decision to be made for you, these are a great option. The IT Cosmetics one has been around, I think, the longest, and they do now have a couple of universal blonde, universal whatever, but this is universal Taupe, and depending on how much pressure you put on the pencil can change the depth of color. So if I have darker tones in my hair, not as much blonde, I can deepen it up. Do you see? So this is the same pencil. It's just this has more layers and a little more pressure. Same goes for this pencil from Your Best Friend. And again, this is a universal Taupe. I think this only comes in one shade. And I've really enjoyed this. This is a great tone, slightly warmer, I think, than the IT Cosmetics maybe. But again, you can go in and layer it up and you can see the difference in color. This one is on Amazon. It's about half the price of the IT Cosmetics one. So if that is a good reason to check it out, again, I will list and link everything down below. So I'm gonna go in on this brow. Let's go in with the Milani. I'm gonna use the shade Caramel. Now what I like to do is I actually like to define the lower part of the brow first, because this, I think, is where you want the majority of your color, and then we want it to fade out as we go up through the brows. If you go in and you carve out the top and the bottom and then fill it in, you're going to get a really harsh look. So we're going for a soft brow color today, soft brow, I should say. So I'm going to use that mark here at the front, and I'm using very light pressure. Do not go in like this and press really hard. You want to go to the end of the pencil. This allows you to see a little better as well. And I'm just going under the brow, and I don't have hair all along this lower part of the brow, but I'm going to make it look like I do, and it's just going to give a definition there that I'm lacking. Okay, so we have a nice line. From this line, we can now fill in the areas that are sparse. So obviously I do have maybe a couple short hairs here. I think I recently lost a few hairs, but I'm going to start at that line and just with some very light strokes, bring that brush up. And as I'm working, I work up here, and then I start flicking the brush out here. You want to pay attention to the direction that your brow hairs grow. So here in the front, again, I'm using a few upward strokes, and then you can kind of soften that front part. And then as we get to this section, I'm going to gradually build up a little bit of color here on the top of the brow to work my way up to that point that we've made for the top of our arch. So again, this is kind of where the highest point of your brow should be. You don't, it does make a difference if you arch your brow too soon. That's going to give a whole different look. And so if you do it this way, it just creates a nice little lift at the outer part of your eye. It's a real big key as we're aging to make your eyes look more lifted when we have a nice little lift. Do you see that? Nice, right? Very easy. And again, I just use that pencil and very softly just drawing short little strokes. Again, you don't want to, not only do you not want to grab the pencil here, but you don't want to go through in a solid line. Just short little strokes, that is the key. And then you can take, on the end of most brow pencils is what's called a spoolie. I had somebody ask me, what is a spoolie? A spoolie is this fluffy brush here. You can buy these spoolies separately and disposable ones as well. If you get a little out of control or a little heavy-handed with your pencil, you can take the spoolie through and just soften that pencil wherever you feel like you got too much product. So it's a great tool. It's a great way to just erase any mistakes that you may have made. I feel like one of the keys to learning a new technique in makeup is just knowing how to undo it or how to fix something if you get a little out of hand with it. So there we go. One brow done. Super, super easy. And I like to kind of just take a step back and look, fill in the next brow, and then we'll evaluate if we need to even things out. On this brow, I want to show you just a difference in the size of the pencil or the shape of the pencil. I'm going to use the IT Cosmetics Brow Universal Brow Pencil, and they do have 3 different shapes of pencils. This is the middle sized one. So again, I'm going to start with my mark here, and I am again just lightly going under the brow, and I'm going to create a lift here. Now, I don't know if you can tell on camera, but I have these hairs right here that grow beyond, or they grow down. So I fix it with brow gel, but for now, I just pretend that those brow hairs are not there, and I create kind of the edge that I want here under the arch. Now, this eye does kind of droop down. So I do kind of have to lift it a little bit, but I don't want to go up here because then it's going to make too much space between my lash line and my brows. So even though this dot is here, I can just easily wipe it away. I know kind of where I want it to end, but I'm just playing a game of trying to even out the eyes a little bit without creating too much space here on the outer corner. All right, and then like what we did over here, what I'm gonna do here is I'm actually going to start about 2/3 of the way in the brow. You see I have kind of this little blank spot here. And I'm going to, since this is a larger pencil, I like to start about midpoint, work my way up to the arch. And by the way, this whole section is missing hair, just FYI. And so then I'm just going to lightly fill in. Now this one can add a lot of color quickly. So, I mean, it's hard to tell how lightly I am holding this pencil, but again, I can't emphasize enough, just light, very small strokes is the key. And you can see when I get to the arch, I'm actually brushing this way. If you look closely, that's how your brow hairs typically grow here at the arch. So I'm just flicking that out. And then as I get here to this inner corner, with this pencil, I will turn it so that it is vertical, and I am going to just very lightly put a little bit of brow color here. And then with this pencil, I don't like to draw it up too far because I feel like I get out of control fast. So I will just kind of lightly tap up and then go in with the spoolie on the other end, and I can clean this up. Now, because I have uneven eyes, what I want to do is just make sure I don't go in too far with this brow, and I did bring this one in slightly more. All right, we're pretty even with color, even though I used 2 different brow pencils. I feel like overall, they look pretty even. What do you think? This one might need a little more color here. All right, now the next step would be to add a brow gel. A brow gel is gonna do 2 things. One, it's going to actually lift and fluff up your brow hairs and hold them in place, but also it can be the tool to help fill in a little color on your actual brow hairs. So if you're somebody who's like, I don't ever wanna dye my brows, I don't wanna mess around with that, or if you're like me who many times I just haven't had time to dye them and I've got a bunch of lighter colored brow hairs in there, you can use a brow gel to help color those hairs. A couple of my absolute favorites are from the drugstore, the e.l.f. Wow Brow. This is just one of the best. It does only come in, I think, 4 shades, maybe 5. This is the taupe shade. I like to have this on hand in case I get a little out of control and I need to lighten up my brows a little bit. This is a good way to do it. Also, the brown shade is a good one if you want to darken up. This one from Gen C, this is a really good one. This one actually has some fibers in it, so it's actually going to help make your brows look fluffier and fuller. And I believe this shade is Blonde. This is my new favorite shade in that. Or the Merit Brow Gel. I have used this I've repurchased this a couple times now. I love this shade in Blonde. This just has the perfect amount of color and hold for me. If you just want a clear brow gel, you freshly dyed your brows like I have, and you just need to hold them in place, the best clear brow gel that will really hold your brows in place is the Anastasia Beverly Hills Clear Brow Gel or the Benefit 24-Hour Brow Setter. Both of those will set your brows in place. If you have wily coyote hairs like I do, those will work. This Got to Be Glued hair gel. If you need to make your brows waterproof, this is the way to do it. You only need the tiniest amount of this brow gel, and you're gonna wanna use a disposable brow spoolie because it will just become like glue on that spoolie and you'll have to throw it away. So just a little tip. But for today, I'm just gonna use the clear Anastasia Beverly Hills brow gel, and I'm just going to softly, now I watch some people like really comb this through their brows and go every direction, and they'll do this with the colored ones. if I've gotten my brows to this place where I'm pretty happy with the color and the fill-in, I don't want to mess that up. So I just like to softly comb this through. If you get too deep and press this into your skin, it is going to remove some of the brow color. So I purposely removed just a little bit here because I want to show you the benefits of the brow pen before we finish this video. So you can see I have this Wile E. Coyote brow here, and sometimes I just don't even pay attention to it. I just comb it up and let it be. But if I really, really want it to be glued in place, I'll just hold it in place there. All right, so you can see that we're pretty good. But the last thing I want to show you is how to add those hair-like strokes. So this would be if you already have a full brow and you just have a couple spots you want to add the hair-like stroke, or you decided you want to really become an artist with your brows and you want to enjoy the practice of filling them in. Use the NYX Lift and Snatch pencil. And I do like to have this on hand, like I said, just in case I get a little overzealous with my gel and I wipe away some of the hair, or if I have a particular bald spot in my brows. All you do with this is you want to start at the base and you want to just flick up through your brows. You don't want to add too many hairs all together, all in a row. And I find this to be easier to use if you've already defined the bottom edge of your brow. So again, here, I really don't need any extra fill in. You can also use this here. Just keep in mind, if you're doing from the arch, you're going to be going down or out. You don't want to go up here. So out. But overall, I do love this pen. Again, like I said, it's nice if you already have a lot of hair that you're working with. So that brow pen is nice. And again, I think that once you get used to it and accustomed to it, it can be a really great tool. But if you are just starting out filling in your brows, go with a pencil. It's easier to wipe off and fix than the pen is. Now, speaking of fixing, many times you will see people get done with their brows and they go in with concealer to really define and further carve out their brows. I hardly ever do this just because it takes a lot of time and usually I'm in a hurry and I don't really feel like I need that extra defining. If you want to do this, two ways you can is with a concealer. I would recommend using the concealer, whatever you're using under your eyes, use the same color. And I like to use kind of a flat angled brush. This is just an old one from Bare Minerals, but there are a lot of brushes out there like that. Or you can use, this is the Morphe M326. This is more of a curved tip, very small. I believe e.l.f. has a similar brush shape. And so this allows you to just go right along the bottom edge of your brow. Now, if you're going to be somebody who carves out your brows, I would encourage you to do your brows before you do your eyeshadow because you can blend out that concealer and then go in with your eye makeup. Now, if you're somebody like me who likes to do their brows at the end and you've already done your eyeshadow and you get just a little out of control with your brow product, or you're like, I need a little defining, you can take an eyeshadow, a cream eyeshadow or a similar tone to your skin. You can use whatever you've used as your brow bone highlight shade. Same philosophy, but it's powder because we've already got powder there. And I just find this an easier way to just subtly carve out or fix the edge of your brow in anywhere that you need to. So if you want to add just a little extra lift here at the arch of the brow, take a little bit of that, go right there. And then because it's powder, you can just easily blend it down right into your eyeshadow. Do you see that? It's very subtle, but this is the way that I prefer to fix my eyebrow and to quote unquote carve it out, because like I said, I don't really love the look on myself of a super carved out defined brow, but I do make mistakes and sometimes I just need to fix it, and that is the way that I like to do that. Now, speaking of fix it, the last tip I want to leave you with is what to do if your brows end up being too dark. You get done and you think, holy smokes, my brows are really dark today. You can take a little bit of your face setting powder. This works better with a setting powder rather than a finishing powder. If you don't know the difference, I have a video all about it. I'll link that down below. But you can just take a little bit of your setting powder and just tap over whatever part of the brow you think you got a little heavy-handed with, and it will automatically just soften the color. You can go in with as much or as little as you need, but that is a way to really help tone down the look of a brow that is just too strong. All right, now as I was fixing my hair, I remembered one more very important thing that I forgot to tell you at the very beginning, and that is before you start filling in your brows, you want to make sure that you have already either powdered your foundation or you've taken a little bit of setting powder through your actual brow hairs. What that's going to do is that is going to absorb any excess oil that might be on your skin, either from your skincare or if you've used a very dewy foundation. It's going to help prevent that dew and that moisture from seeping into your brows and wearing off your brow through the day. That is one question I get asked so often, Shirley, why aren't my brows staying in place? And that could be the reason. So just use a little bit of setting powder right through your brows before you start the fill-in, and I promise you, you're going to see a big difference. That will also help kind of grab a hold of your brow products, whatever you are using in your brows. I hope that you found this video helpful. As always, check the description box below for links and a list of everything that I used today. I will also link my previous brow videos just in case I left something critical out of this one. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.